In the tapestry of life, where every thread holds a story, America in black and white emerges as a haven for the voices echoing through the heart of our communities. In this podcast, we wade through the rivers of our collective experiences, celebrating the vibrant hues of change brought forth by the whispers of hope and the roars of action. It's more than just a conversation. It's a journey into the heart of our society, illuminated by the light of those daring to dream and do. Join us, and let your voice be the melody that guides us toward a dawn where every color finds its place in the masterpiece of our shared destiny. Together, let's paint a future brimming with the positives that dwell in our minds and the actions that shape our world.
Good evening, ladies and gentlemen, and welcome to another episode of America in Black and White, where we are coloring conversations on the canvas of America. Tonight, our special guest is Pastor Willie J. Lightfoot Sr. Elder Willie Joe Lightfoot Sr. was appointed pastor of Prayer House Church of God by Faith in Rochester, New York in 2021, right in the midst of the global pandemic. Over the past 4 years, he has led the congregation with a holistic focus on mind, body, and spirit, guiding his flock through unprecedented challenges and fostering vibrant spiritual growth. Under his visionary leadership, Prayer House embraced the digital age. A state-of-the-art mobile app now delivers live stream worship, interactive devotionals, sermon notes, and seamless giving, ensuring every member stays connected and engaged. Pastor Will's ministry initiatives reflect his deep commitment to serving both individual and community needs. He launched the Senior Meals Program to deliver hot, nutritious meals weekly to homebound and isolated seniors. He helped found Compassion Bridge Ministries, a 501c3 organization providing quality of life resources to underserved communities. His seasonal prayer house test revivals draw neighbors together for powerful worship and collective intercession under the open sky. Every week, he crafts and distributes professional sermon teaching materials, outlines, discussion guides, and scriptures reflections to in-person attendees and digital subscribers alike. Outside the church walls, Pastor Will exemplifies leadership in multiple arenas. He is a military veteran who served in the United States Air Force, a longtime elected official in Monroe County Legislature and Rochester City Council, and a successful entrepreneur with ventures in real estate and community development. Pastor Will is also a retired City of Rochester firefighter. An accomplished author, Pastor Lightfoot penned Intersection Between Pain and Purpose, a transformative study on how life's deepest struggles can become catalysts for God-glorifying growth. He anchors his pastoral vision in his favorite scriptures, Psalm 1, calling the believers to delight in God's law and bear lasting fruit like trees planted by streams of water. At home, Pastor Will is grounded by 29 years of marriage to his partner in ministry, prophetess Verdina Lightfoot. They are proud parents of 4 adult children and delighted grandparents to 4 grandchildren. Rounding out the Lightfoot household is Sapphire, their ever-loyal English bulldog, who offers daily reminders of God's simple joys and steadfast faithfulness. Ladies and gentlemen, I'd like to bring to the show Pastor Willie Lightfoot Sr. Hello, sir.
Well, hello, sir. God bless you.
Hey, well, I thank you so very kindly for being here.
Thank you for having me. It's my pleasure. Greetings to you and to your viewing audience. God bless you. I'm excited and humbled to be here to have a great conversation tonight.
Yes. So is there anything you'd like to add to your bio before we get into the show?
No, sir. I think you captured everything pretty well. I'm just excited to tap in and to be able to share whatever I can share to hopefully encourage someone out there who may take a gleam of light from us tonight.
Okay, well, let's just get right into this great study here that we're going to have tonight, and we're going to start with your career as a pastor. Can you tell us what first called you to the ministry?
That's a very, very good question, man. I would have to say that, Mr. King, my journey, my faith journey, it was a God journey, as many probably can identify with. For me, I gave my life to Christ in the summer of '95 in the Orlando Magic Mall. And the thing that was interesting about that is I hadn't really grown up in the church. And actually with my stepfather was a fireman in Orlando, and my mother lived in Orlando, Florida. I was in the military at the time, and I was a full-time student at our current community college here in Rochester, New York, called Monroe Community College, and everything, life was going well for me. I'm in the military. I'm attending school, working on my degree, and tragedy happened. And and my stepfather, who was living in Orlando, who had brothers who were police officers, he was a fireman. He had other brothers who were firemen. Went fishing in Tampa, Florida, and he drowned. Boat capsized. They held onto the boat. I think him and two others that were fishing with them. I think there were four of them, and he was the only one that didn't survive. And as a result of that, there was a rescue crew that went out to look for him. And the rescuer, who was a police officer in the helicopter, fell in, and he passed as well. So there was a double funeral for my stepfather and a police officer, a fireman and a police officer, in the summer of '95 in Orlando, Florida. And so that led to the journey of me. My mother at the time and my brother were there alone in Orlando, and they asked me to come down to assist them. And to make a long story short, I had just was using my VA benefits to be able to go to school, my GI Bill, and I couldn't pull out of school just that quickly. I had just got into the middle of my semester, so I was very troubled on how I was going to be able to do that. And I was walking down the hall, and there was a poster on the wall that said, "Go work for Disney World and earn college credit." So I end up applying for the position, end up getting accepted, and getting sent to Orlando, Florida, where my mother was and where she needed me, to be able not only to assist her and help her, but also to earn college credit during the time that I was there. And I was able to pull my National Guard drills in Jacksonville, Florida at the time. So I end up going down there. It was a setup. I'm saying all of this because, it kind of leads maybe to the later conversation of, how the intersection between pain and purpose, how I got to this place through what some would call tragedy, but God turned it into purpose in my life. And I ended up going down there. I ended up meeting a gentleman down there who I ended up giving my life to Christ. I ended up coming home, meeting my wife, ended up starting to go to church. And then I got called into ministry in 2000. I got my first ordination as a minister in 2004 by the Church of God by Faith. And then I became an ordained elder 4 years after that in 2007. And then, that is kind of how I got into the ministry. I served under the late, great David C. Rourke at Greater Adams Street Church of God by Faith in Rochester, New York. My church and congregation and organization that I'm affiliated with is the Church of God by Faith under the leadership of our Bishop, James E. McKnight Jr. And so I've been in that organization for over 30 years now, but it started through me, actually, the situation that happened with my mom, and then being able to allow me to go and be able to assist her. And then as a result of the things that were going on there, kind of led me down my journey and my path and my Christian journey.
Oh, cool. So can you tell us, how has your faith shaped your leadership style?
Well, faith is everything to me, brother. And I would say that, faith without works is dead. So my faith is paramount in my leadership style because it enables me to focus my attention when I'm in leadership roles. And I've had several leadership roles, and I'm in several leadership roles, have been in leadership roles my entire life. I joined the military at 17 years old, 2 weeks after high school. I was in the military, went to basic training at 17, turned 18 in basic training, end up becoming the dorm leader of my squadron. And we end up going from the worst squadron ever. I mean, it could have been a movie, man. We were horrible, to becoming, it was bad. And we went through 5 dorm chiefs. I was the 5th dorm chief. And then after that, we end up being we end up being an honor flight. We got a score of 199 out of 200. And so that was me at 18. Then I got shipped from there to Grand Forks, North Dakota on an OJT assignment, which is on the job training. I was the only one out of maybe 50, 60 guys that got sent directly to an assignment. The rest of them went to what they call tech school, which is additional training. I didn't go to forgone tech school. They sent me directly to war, basically. And this is 91. So this is Desert Storm. And so I'm saying all that to say that at that time, I believe leadership was always embedded in me and inside of me. But when I came into my faith and into my journey as my Christian walk, it became more strengthened because now I had the word of God to kind of guide me and lead me in other areas. Oftentimes I leaned on my training, my military training, my fire department training, my street training. I'm from inner city here in Rochester, New York. And I think any young person or any person that comes out of an inner city community can understand what I'm saying when I say, street training or there's a lot that comes with living in a very distressed neighborhood and community. You got to keep your head on a swivel. You got to be kind of wise about yourself and understand, you got to listen to the OGs, if you will, and the older ones and the elders. And you got to you have some skills about you and some wit about you in these types of environments. I'm still in that environment to this day. I built my business in the same community in which I was born and raised in. And so my faith is everything because it allows me to have a foundation in which helps me to guide me in all of the decisions and things that I do that normally I would have just relied on my education and my training. And so not only do I have the education and the training, but I also have the scriptures and the guidance of the spiritual guidance to guide and lead me in addition to those other resources and tools.
Well, can you tell us this, with your faith and with the leadership and, the things that you were doing as you got to this particular point that you just described, is it at this particular point in time that you found your purpose, or how did this lead to you finding your purpose?
Yeah, that's a very good question. And I think ultimately, I was finding my purpose along the journey. And it was like often equated to like a 2,000 or 3,000 piece puzzle. And along the way, pieces begin to come clearer and clearer as I begin to mature and grow and age, and God began to open and close various doors within my life. The picture of the puzzle starts to become more clear. And I talk about it in my book about, how we all can identify with pain. We all can identify with loss. All of us have had some sorts of loss in our lives, whether it's loss of a family member, loss of a job, loss of a position, loss of pride, or various things that we may have gone through in our journeys through life. But in those losses and in those particular painful things that may happen in our life is purpose. And I believe that that my spiritual journey allowed me to see what was more darkened in my life a lot more clear. And I encourage people, especially those of faith, to really, really understand and look that everything happens for a reason. And that's what I had to understand. Every position that I ever was in life, every job that I ever took, every person I ever met, every situation and circumstances that I ever went through and am going through was all for a reason and for a purpose, and help get me to the place of where I am today.
Mm-hmm. So what's the most rewarding part of pastoring your congregation?
The most rewarding part of pastoring my congregation, I believe, is the people. It's all about the people. And, you know, in any pastoral or any Christian walk, you have to love God, you have to love his word, and you have to love his people. And I love people. And I think the most rewarding thing is being able to see people empowered, encouraged, their lives changed, as mine was changed from being one way, and then through the mentorship, through the lessons and the teaching of good sound doctrine, and someone who cares about you and is willing to put the time and energy and effort in your developments, both mind, body, and spirit, and then to see that manifest in people's lives, manifest in their children and in their families, and how it manifests in our community, in our world, because one person could change our world. And I think that's the most rewarding thing for me, to see the teachings and the lessons and manifested in people's lives, and watch and hearing their testimonies of how God has blessed them and changed their family members, and then watching all of that materialize and grow into a beautiful, healthy organization. I think is, for me, is what's most rewarding, and working with the community and seeing because even our congregation and members, they're part of the community. So, you know, they represent the community in which, and then for me, I'm located where my business is located, that I built from the ground up, is located in Rochester area, in the 14611 area, and my church. And that would be considered on the west side of the city of Rochester. And then in my church is 14605, which is on the east side of the area. Both of those zip codes are considered the second and fourth poorest zip codes in the state of New York. Now, I have to put that in perspective, Mr. King, because upstate New York, Rochester's population is about 210,000 people. Our county is about 1 million, but we're talking about the city here. But downstate, there's millions of people. So when they say that the second and fourth poorest zip code in the state of New York, that's beating out the boroughs like Queens, Brooklyn, the Bronx, Manhattan, etc., who have millions of people living in them. And for a population of 210,000 people, understand the magnitude of what those numbers say, those statistics say of my business being in the second and my church being in the fourth poorest zip codes in the state of New York. Now, when I say that, and when the mayors say that, because remember, I'm also a city councilman too. So, and I've been a long-term elected official, PK kid. My father was an elected official for many years. And so when that says, people think that that's a daunting statement. They don't like when that statement is made. But I see, as a pastor, and wanted to further answer your question of what is most rewarding, I see that as opportunity. I see it as opportunity to help those who are most in need. And I just happen to be placed strategically. And I think, like I go back to what I said before, everything is for a reason. And I just happen to be placed on both the business side and on the spiritual side in the places of most need in our community.
That was so enlightening, just as you say that, because let me just say this, and maybe because I need you to help me to put this in the right perspective, is that when you say your business and your church are in both the second and the fourth poorest districts in the state of New York, being in upstate New York, okay, which this is, so I want you to feel where I'm going with this, is because, where you being centered, where your church is centered, for one. Now, that in itself, I think if people actually understood what that looks like, especially in the state of New York. I would think that more people there would be more of the leadership that will be trying to pour more into at least that fourth zip code, because it's a populous area, but not as populous as in the city. But I've got to imagine that being in upstate New York, that has got to be one of the largest places. But being the poorest, apparently has to be like a redlined area where you just send Black people.
Mm-hmm.
And so if that's the case, that's a problem. And the reason why I say that's a problem is because, when people think of New York and they think of upstate, they think of it as being, upstate is not as, economically, it's not as valuable as it is down in the city. But with it being as plentiful as it is, because that means that you guys have acreage and you have like real living. Why is it that, the leadership for the state, because I know they know this at the state capitol, I know they know this, why are they not being more resourceful to bring things to where it needs to be in order to be a little bit more of an at easement for people? Because I think the stress on your church is going to continue to be a stress to where, you can only do so much. And so if you're not actually getting the real help outside of your church, I mean, like, what are they doing? Can you tell us, like, what's happening, or have you actually got a chance to chat with some people about that?
Yes, that's an ongoing question, has been an ongoing question and concern of mine all my life, to be quite honest with you, in this community, because I would offer to say that the statistics show for these same neighborhoods that I'm talking about, which have also been coined the crescent, because they look like, when you map them, put them on a map, it looks like a crescent moon in these neighborhoods. And that's been like that. I'm 53 years old. That's been like that since I've been in high school. These same zip codes tend to be the same areas that have, you got 10% of the streets in the neighborhood streets that are causing 90% of the crimes. 90% of the violent crimes are happening in these same 10% of the street. So to your point, someone said to me once, out of Brooklyn, one of the pastors down there said to me, well, if you put 90% of your resources in them 10% of those streets, that you would change that dynamic of that situation in those communities almost overnight, right? Mm-hmm. And so I said, well, that's an interesting point, because what he's basically saying is put more resources in the areas that need them the most, right? And you're saying, well, what are they doing? I can tell you what they're not doing. And I think basically, when I went to Washington, D.C. at a conference one time, and I was sharing with the individuals at the conference in the particular neighborhood that I live in and that my business is in, and they wanted to use a model for a project of everybody working together to change that community. So when I showed them the model and told them what I was talking about, they said, well, we can't use this model because what you just showed us is called containment. And I said, containment? What do you mean containment? They says, no, what you just showed us in your neighborhood, in your community, sounds like containment. And containment is intentional, right? And that, nobody's trying to fix that problem. And so what I can say, so I'll tell you what has happened. Now Rochester is a very unique, interesting place.
Right.
It was called Smugtown back in the early 40s and 50s. It was very Kodak, Xerox, Rochester Products. These are big companies. Wegmans, Fortune 500 company. These are big companies that are here in this city. Very, very wealthy communities here in this city. The home of Susan B. Anthony and Frederick Douglass. Okay, but when the 1960s had, like many communities and many of our I would say parents that grew up in the Jim Crow era and in civil rights in the 60s and lived in down south, they moved to Rochester for a better quality of life. They moved to Rochester, upstate New York, to get away from the South for better job opportunities, for better, bigger houses and more opportunities. And so what we saw in the 60s, we had riots here in 1964 in Rochester, and the governor had to come to Rochester. They built an inner loop in the middle of the street. This happened in Syracuse, happened in many cities across our country. When riots happened in the 60s, a lot of people, there was the people, urban sprawl, and they moved out from the inner city out into the suburbs. We saw communities dispersed, and we're in certain communities now that are all non-Black, that used to be all African American people that lived in these communities back in the 60s. And then so now what they're doing is they're spending Rochester right now, and where my church is, there's over $100 million project, the largest municipal project in the city of Rochester ever, of $100 million plus. Now that's just to get the program started, where they're going to rebuild up this inner loop and reconnect these communities and try to undo the injustice that were done in these communities back in 1964. So that's the largest piece, I would tell you, from these two communities that are happening. But I would be the first to say, being on the county legislature, being on city council, that I agree that enough has not been done in strategically and focused investment in certain neighborhoods in this city in decades.
Now, Pastor Lightfoot, I want to ask you this, because that's a lot of money to invest. And so if the purpose is to actually connect all of these tentacles, to bring them together, right? I want to ask you, what are they doing as far as schools? What are they doing as to bringing business there, to bring the economics back? What are they doing as to maybe some job training, job programs for people that are maybe dropping out of school to fix that rate? What are they doing as to just in general training, especially when it comes to AI right now? Because AI is the thing that we know that's going forward in the future. And so where you guys are, if they're putting that kind of investment there, you guys have more than enough of an area to encompass all of these things to make it that much better. Are those things on the table?
Yes, I would say they are, Brother King. I think what Rochester, unfortunately and fortunately, depending on how you look at it, we hear people say a lot that we're resource rich, but we're results poor, right? So there are a lot of wealth of programming that happens in this community. My father used to say all the time, rest in peace, he would say, if you can't make it in Rochester, you can't make it nowhere, right? Because there's so many job opportunities, and there's a lot of opportunities here. And I would say collectively over the years, many of our mayors, our county executives have worked to create a wealth of different types of programming around all of the things that you've mentioned to help better the quality of life. I think where we could do better is we have to be able to bring all of these pieces together and have a better way of people working outside of silos and working more unified in our community. And I truly believe that this federal administration is going to force us to that place. It's going to force us to a place that I think we may have not been in a long time, because they're reducing lots of opportunities and monies and fundings, especially to certain communities. And Rochester is a sanctuary city. And so that puts us on the radar, right? On a federal radar. We've had federal people come to our community talking about this very sensitive topic. But Rochester has taken a very clear stance that we are a sanctuary city, and we've doubled down on that stance, right? So I'm saying that to say, as we see resources that have been that could be jeopardized, or we may not, from federal on down, that we may have not been used to not receiving. It's going to cause people that may have not been having collective conversations, right? People working in silos and not having collective conversations about the overall infrastructure and betterment of our school, because it always comes down to these three things: schools, jobs, and housing. Schools, job, and housing. Those problems have been around for centuries, and then of course you can always throw public safety in there. And so those are issues in every urban community that people are dealing with in every urban community, and we have those issues here. And when we talk about schools, oh my God, man, our school district, our local public schools have over $1 billion budget, but their graduation rate is really poor, is really bad. And so when we look at all of these factors, right? To be, again, I say, and I hear you very loud and clearly, that the church, we can't do it all. However, we can do our part. And I truly believe that that I've been in these positions, and me being put in this new position, because I've been pastoring now 4 years, and where my church is, again, is in this area that's getting ready to have this huge $100 million fill-in of the inner loop. I'm right smack dab in the middle of this. So it's imperative that we not get ready, but we be ready, and having these conversations and making sure that our church is poised, and other churches and other partners are ready to be able to provide the needed services that and make sure that people aren't being further traumatized, and that they do more damage than good. And we see gentrification going on, which we're seeing happening in a lot of our inner cities. More people are wanting to move back into the inner cities, and they're abandoning the suburbs.
Mm-hmm. So how do you balance spiritual guidance with practical support?
For me, I think my spiritual guidance probably comes from a more practical place, because of the type of way that I was, raised, and the way that I view things. And so I balance them by always, first of all, is it ethical? If it's ethical, is it moral, or is it illegal? Right. So I always put that 3 litmus test in whatever I'm doing. Right. So that's very practical. You know what I'm saying? So it starts with that. And then I often think about, how is this going to impact not only, myself, always putting myself, putting others before myself, but not forgetting myself and my own family, because I think that's very important for a lot of pastors. They're managing the flock, they're managing the community, and then their families are suffering. Their wives are suffering, their families are suffering. So I never want to, you said balance. So that's key, that you have to have balance practically, meaning that, charity begins at home. You got to start with yourself. You got to take care of ourselves. We got to take care of our own health. We got to take care of the health of our families. And then we can begin to assist in the health of our members, and which are, again, are part of the community, and then helping our community and letting that circle go even further, that ripple effect go even further, but we have to start. The balance practically starts with self.
Mm. Well, we're gonna continue this conversation, but we're gonna transition over to your career as a city councilman, because now we're going to approach this from a different side.
Sure.
And so, can you tell us what inspired you to enter public service?
Great question again. All right, my father, the late great Willie Walker Lightfoot. All my life, all I've ever known about this man was community service. We lived, we ate, we breathed community service in the Lightfoot household. My father was a athlete, a very good athlete. He was a county legislator here locally for many years. He was the founder and executive director of his own non-for-profit called SWAN, Southwest Area Neighborhood Association. And it was smack dab in the middle of actually where I am now. I'm in the same area that my father was in. And so my whole life, I say I'm a PK kid. elected a politician kid, but my dad never liked the word politician. He always thought it was a nasty, dirty word, right? So he always would tell people to call him an elected official. But so it really came from my father. It came from him. I met my wife campaigning for my dad, and so when my father, I went into the military, I actually didn't want to do politics. I actually, like most PK kids, and I'll say preacher kids, typically be the worst kids in the church. They the ones that don't want to go to church because they were forced to go. They the one, they the ones that tend to go shy away from all of the things that their parents did because they saw all the pain that their parents went through, right? So I saw that as a politician's kid, my father, the pain that the long day, early days and long nights and people just constantly pulling on him. And we never had really family time because everything we did was always around the politics or the community. If we went to a baseball game, it was a fundraiser for somebody. You know what I mean? If we went out and did something, it was always attached to the community or to politics. And he would always say politics is everything and everything is politics. And so when what happened, I went to the military. I did everything that my father, he was kind of a rebel. He didn't go to Vietnam, because he was like, I'm not gonna fight them people. And they, he was like Muhammad Ali. They never called me the N-word, you know what I'm saying? So he rebelled against that kind of service where I embraced that. Like I went to serve my country. He was very proud of that. And then when I came back, I didn't want anything. I would help him, but I didn't want anything to do with politics. And so what ended up happening is my father got sick in 2000, and he got sick, and he went in for surgery. He was 59 he was 60 at the time, just turned 60, and then he passed away in April of stomach cancer. So he died very quickly, went down very fast. So when he passed, at the time I'm in the military and I'm on the City of Rochester Fire Department, fresh into my my career, not too long, 5 years or so into my career. And when he passed, he was such a force in this community that they showed. They said, "Hey, the Honorable Willie Lightfoot has passed away," and they said, and they flashed across his desk. They said his son is going to take his position. I said, "What?" I said, what? My wife, everybody, we sitting there watching the news. Like, what? Nobody had asked me anything. And when I tell you, Charles, my name was on his desk, because our middle initials are different. Right. He's Willie Walker, I'm Willie J. It said Willie J. Lightfoot across the desk. I don't know how they did this before AI. I don't know how they did that. Wow. But that's what it was. So my phone, man, the community was pushing. So now I'm in the church at this time, and I'm in the military in the National Guard. I'm doing weekends, and I'm living my life. I'm a fireman, right? I'm living my life. I'm getting ready to buy my first home. I'm marrying my wife, and she had 2 children. I had kids. I'm raising a family. The furthest thing from my mind was running for politics. Mm-hmm. So once they put that out there, the swell from the community was so heavy that people were literally, asking me what to do and trying to make this work. And where I bought my house, I didn't live in the district. I didn't live in the district my father represented. So it was redistricting time where they draw the lines. They were going to draw my house into this district. They were having those types of conversations. And I'm flipping out, man. Like I'm still trying to mourn the death of my father. This is April of 2001. So now, prior to October of 2000, his building caught on fire and burned to. I'm a fireman. 3-alarm fire burned to the ground. Right. So the founding organization that he started, robust organization, took it to $1 million organization from nothing. Had caught on fire, and the community was they were already hurting. You understand what I'm saying, for the loss of this thing, and then now he passes, right? And so then what else happens in 2001? 9/11. Mm-hmm. So now I got my father building burned, and me working with him before he passed away to try to rebuild the building, and him passing away, and I'm a fireman now and in the military. And 9/11 happens. So people are trying to get me to run for office that year. I get orders to go to Operation Enduring Freedom. I gotta go, right? I get sealed secret orders to go, and I went to a place called Uzbekistan, which is called it's referred to as K2 now. But it's the first time America has occupied Russian airspace. And so I get sent there for 4 months. Meanwhile, I'm still trying to rebuild this building while I'm away. And long story short, I come back. I end up being successful through a lot of trials and tribulations of rebuilding the building. And I went to run for his position in 2001. And I was told that I could not run because I was a fireman. And there was a local law, Section 8B5, that said police and fire cannot hold positions of elected office. It's been in the books for decades. Now, this is an interesting point because at the time we had our first African-American fire chief, Floyd Madison, from a Baltimore area, and great guy. And I'm also a barber too, so I got to put that in perspective. So I used to cut the chief's hair, so I had his ear. You understand what I'm saying? So now, okay, he tells me one day we're at a fire in the neighborhood, and he comes out and he pulls two people aside, myself and a white lieutenant, and he tells us both, "You guys can't be elected officials." He said, "Willie, you can't run," and he goes, "Donnie, you got to quit your position." Now, remember, I never knew there's no rule. I never wanted to run, and I didn't know there was a rule. So when I found out there was a rule, I'm like, good. I don't have to. I'm done with this. It ain't gonna work out. But Donnie Ferrero was a Caucasian lieutenant on the fire department who had been an elected official in the suburbs for years. Nobody never said nothing to him. So you asked me how did I get? So that's what made me. When I found out the racial disparity, now that I wanted to run and was a fireman, I'm being
now
told,
the law comes in order.
But he had been doing it for years. Rest in peace, because he passed away. But and now it's a problem. So that gave me, there was something inside of me that said I can't stand for that. Right? That's wrong. Right? Why we are civil servants? Why should we be prohibited from being democracy? So I end up, my mentor was is Todd Ballard, H. Todd Ballard, who was an attorney and who also held a position in the county. So he started researching it and found that there were other communities that had the similar language in their charters, and that where the firemen fought the law and got it changed, and they became firemen. So at that time, we were working to do that, but then that's when I got the orders to go overseas. So we paused it for a minute. Somebody else took the position for a while. When I came back, we worked to get it changed. The former mayor, first African-American mayor in Rochester was Mayor Johnson, William Johnson, and he worked along with city council at that time he agreed with me that law was wrong, and we ended up getting through a lot of advocacy, city council to take that law out of the city charter. And then in 2005, I became the first firefighter officially elected to office in Monroe County.
Wow. How do your pastoral values influence your political decisions?
Well, I'm gonna have you repeat that question. But out of everything that I just said, I want to go back to this before I leave, because I think this is a really good point for the viewers. Out of everything I just said, the reason why I'm glad you asked that question of how, and I'm glad I went through the process of how, because I want people to take from that. Don't ever let nobody tell you what you can't do. Don't ever let nobody say that laws have to be the same. Laws can be antiquated, and just like they were made, they can be changed. And we have a lot of laws that are antiquated. We have a lot of laws that are that should be changed, need to be changed. And unless somebody speaks up and fights for change, they'll just continue to be the same. So I really want people to walk away from that to see I could have laid down and not fought that. And then others, since me, there has been other firemen and police officers who have ran successfully for offices and stuff and who hold office even now. And so that paved the way, and they're great servants, and that paved the way for others. But it took somebody to say change was necessary. But repeat that question again, brother. I just wanted to make that point. I'm sorry.
No, it says, how do your pastoral values influence your political decisions?
So that's another good question. I never mixed, or I tried my hardest not to mix my politics and my pastoral or my minister. And what I'll tell you by that is I never campaigned in my church. I never used the pulpit for political rhetoric. I don't preach like that. I don't talk like, you know what I'm saying? I never used the members in my church to work on my campaign. I never used my church as a campaign headquarters or hosted campaign meetings at my church. I've never done that. I always, mostly too, because my church is Pentecostal church, don't believe in that anyway, right? So I never had to worry about like really getting the lines great, you know, getting blurred, because that's a lot of people get caught up. And because I was a fireman and I had to tote this line anyway, right? Because only was so much I could do as a fireman. You know, it was times, Brother King, I had 2 or 3 uniforms in my car because I got to change from my fire uniform and put on a jacket, you know, after make sure it's time that I'm off the clock so I could go to a community meeting. You know what I'm saying? I had to always make sure that I was separating everything. And it was times my wife would say I was like Clark Kent, you know, changing in the telephone booth, you know, changing roles all the time, right? But I had to do that in order to keep the integrity of the different hats that I was wearing, because no one else had ever done what I did. No, there had been no other elected official firefighter. There had been nobody that was doing, other than the guy I was telling you about secretly, but you know what I'm saying, who was doing it officially and publicly. So what I always did is I always made sure that I understood the why. Where was I at and why was I there? And what was I there for? And so I always made sure I kept my mind focused on my audience and what the intent of where I was going and what I was sent there to do. So that's how but at the end of the day, my spiritual values were always going to be at the forefront of any decision. So there were only certain things that I wasn't going to do. I got in trouble one time, I would say, with the LGBTQ community, you know, because I ran for a primary. I won legitimately. I got enough votes to be chosen as a Democratic candidate one time, and they chose another candidate from that community, and I called them on it, right? Because I wasn't from that community. I felt that was discrimination towards me. And a lot of heat came to me, but I had to stand my ground on my moral values, on what I believe, you know, and I got elected 5 times. People knew who they were electing. They knew my values. They knew who I was as a minister at that time, but they knew my faith wasn't very important to me, my faith, my family, my community. And so it never stopped me from getting elected or reelected, because I stood on the morals and the values that I was raised in and that I believe.
Ooh, you know, that just put, when you said that put 5 questions in my mind, because, you know, I understand what you're saying about, you know, with the LGBTQ community being upset. Let me ask you this, because, you know, as interesting as that is, can you tell us, like, when you're dealing with the community, I mean, you're dealing with people as a whole. So I'm sure that there's no biases in any shape, form, or fashion. And of course, with you being, of course, a Black church, you know, and in that area, you know, it's already to where, you know, you guys are, you know, you got to fight for whatever you get, regardless of the case. In this situation where you've got you as a minority and the LGBTQ community as a minority, what actually what would actually make them think to go and say they want to select someone else when you've already been selected and you're both minorities doing the same cause? Can you tell us how did that come out?
Yeah, it was very tough to swallow that for me, right? Because I looked at it just from the same. That's why I said, isn't it like reverse discrimination? In that statement, the guy took a 20-minute conversation and just took that one statement out of it, right? And then that was the headline. And then, of course, I got the backlash from it. And my thing was, like you said, I serve everybody. I'm an at-large. At that time, it was a county legislature situation, but I'm an at-large city council member, so I represent the entire city, right? Mm-hmm. So I'm, like you said, I can't have any biases. If somebody call my phone and they need help picking up their garbage, or they got an issue with a code or thing, a violation on their house, or whatever the case may be, I have to help them, and I want to help them. However, I'm a human being, and I have my own values, morals, beliefs, and things as well, and I want to be respected by those just as others want to be respected by those. And I had clearly won the position, and came in 5th place, and they picked a person that was in 9th place. So it was clear that they were going down way, it wasn't like they picked the 6th, 7th
to the bottom of the barrel.
Because I was told, because the seat was formerly someone from that demographic, that the people wanted to restore the same type of person in that position. And I was always told these seats don't belong to a particular person. Like my seat that I'm in, I'm currently not running for re-election. I'm retiring in December from politics after 30 years. My that's not my seat. That seat belongs to the people. So it's whoever they want to choose, and they can be white, black, green, whatever they, that's who it's going to be. And so I felt just like you did, and the way it played out, brother, there were, and I'm sure this happens in every community across the country, there were certain factions that had power and control, and they controlled certain way things come out in elections, if you will, especially primaries and designations and processes and all of those things. There are people who are internally in those processes, and they had their pick of what they wanted to see and what they wanted to do. And I was told there was no way in the world I was going to win. And I ended up coming, I think, in 1st place in the actual election primary and in the November election that particular year. So, the people spoke at the end of the day, as opposed to the small committee, because this was for an endorsement I'm talking about. It was a Democratic endorsement. And so, but, nonetheless, I stayed steadfast and just, and working around the process and working with the people. And like I said, it's always about the people. And that got me through that particular situation. But it hurt. It was very painful to see that happen. And like you said, we're both in kind of similar situations, in minority situations.
Mm-hmm. Now, before we transition over to the next part of this, because there's like one other question here with that, is that for those people that actually tried to circumvent the law again and to bring someone else into this position, what was the operation or the process that you really had to go through? Because I'm sure you had to go through a strenuous process to say, no, this is not going to happen. But what was that process like that you had to go through in order to correct and rectify that situation?
Well, it never got rectified. They actually chose that person. That person got the endorsement, and I had to run without the endorsement, right? Which at the time, that was a big deal, having that endorsement, because you had the machine behind you, if you will. You know what I mean? And I was fairly new. I think that was the first time I ran in 2017 for city council. I can make a correction. It wasn't county leg. It was city council in 2017. And so I had to just take it to the streets. That was the process for me, which in a way was always the way my father did it anyway. Right. See, my father never really looked for the endorsements, party endorsements. He always took it to the streets, and he always had a primary every time he ran. And so I was used to working hard like that. I'm a hard worker. So I was used, you see by many jobs that I had. So when that happened, it just fueled me to do what was already inside of me and what I was trained to do by my father anyway, which was to fight. Mm-hmm. And so we fight at the street, knocking on the doors, talking to the people, putting out our issues, making sure that we run a solid, hard campaign. And so that's what it forced me to do. It just forced me. It's like putting a dog, in a corner. You know what I'm saying? And eventually, that dog is gonna come out attacking because you don't put them in a corner. So they put me in a corner, and mm-hmm. I had two choices. I was going to walk away and cry, or I was going to fight. Mm-hmm. And so I said, I'm fighting, right? And that's another. I hope in everything that we talk about, I always like to make sure that people are encouraged by the fact that things gonna go against you. Everybody don't like you. Everybody's not gonna be supportive of you. There are certain elements that's gonna try to get in your way of blocking you. People call it haters, and you're gonna have different obstacles in your life. But if you believe in what yourself and you put the right team of people around you and you work hard, my father always told me, you work hard, you can do anything you put your mind to. And so I've had many of those instances through my political journey and through almost everything I've done, where it's always been a tremendous amount of struggle and obstacles. It's never been easy. Mm-hmm. It's never been easy for me. And most of us, especially as African-American men, know living in this world we live in, it's never easy for us.
Exactly. Let's transition over to your community engagement and activism. What drives your passion for community work?
Again, when you've been raised a certain way and when it's been embedded in you, I think you just revert to your environment. I'm a product of my environment. My father embedded community in me. When I was 10 years old, I started working in his non-for-profit organization. He had a program called Adopt a Block. And there's a Jefferson Avenue probably in every community in America. And the place that I keep referring to that my business is at is on Jefferson Avenue in Rochester, New York. And I'm sure it probably looks like every Jefferson Avenue, at least every one I've seen. I've been in a lot of places. Every Jefferson Avenue I've seen in this in this country, pretty much they all look similar. They're all underserved and et cetera. So one of the first jobs I had was cleaning up, and this is back. I'm 53, so I'm a 70s baby. So I'm going back in the 80s. Early 90s, late 80s, early 90s, when before my preteen 80s and then my teen in the 90s, where we didn't have the bottle law in here in New York. So there were a lot of glass was everywhere. It used to be all over our basketball courts and our football fields, and we used to have people would break glass all over the place before the 5-cent bottle law was out. Now you can't find no glass, you can't find a bottle anywhere no more, right? So, but we used to have to go and clean up the parks and in the street and debris and trash every day. And I would used to think my father would wake me up like 6 a.m, knock on my door, and he's like, "Come on, it's time to go." And I'd be like, "Well, we just cleaned the street yesterday." He's like, "There's new trash out there today, right?" So we go out, there, and so that started it, right? And then by working on, as I got older, around 14, 15, then he started showing me things I could do in the office to help him politically with his campaign, because I was always good with computers and things of that nature. So he liked, some of the things that I could bring to the table when it comes to organizing. And I wouldn't consider myself an activist, as more of a community organizer. And then as I got older, like I said, I went to the military very young. So at 17, I was gone off to the military, went to Desert Storm in 91, came back home, joined from active duty to the National Guard in Niagara Falls. And that's when I trained became a fireman in the military. So every job I've had has been a job of service, and so it was natural for me to turn my civil service into working in the community. And so I just always had, and then I had affinity for being a barber. So when I was young, when I was a teenager, and so I started learning that craft. And then there's no more community source than your local barber. Your local barber is like, a lot of people don't know, the red, white, and blue pole, what it stands for. It's bloodletting. And it means back in the old days, the barber was everything. He was the physician. He was the he was a dentist. He was the local congregation place for the community. So becoming a barber quite naturally made me a community person just in nature of my profession. People coming into the barbershop, sitting down. Most people don't change three things in their life. They typically transcend generations: their barber or beautician, their spiritual leader, right? And their doctor. I used to say husband or wife, but people change those like they change their underwear. So, but and those are three things that people will tell. Women will tell their cosmetologist, their beautician, that they're pregnant before they tell their husband. Men will test out things that they want to do with their girlfriends or wives with their barber, run it through their barber before they actually do it. So those types of things, the background of my environment through my father and the training, and my own innate passion for being a barber, and that really being in that environment, and it was such a communal environment that those things pushed me into all of the work that I do now. And I have many wealth of programs and wealth of community or things that I do, even like now in my pastoral role, programming and different things that I'm running out of our church, even as we speak.
So can you share a story of a grassroots initiative that made a real impact?
Yeah, there are several, but I'm gonna give you this one, which is when I came into city council, well, there's two. I'm one on the political side, and then one on the community side, using the barbershop that I just used as an example. So when I first came into the county legislature, I started a program called Cut the Violence. Cut the Violence was free haircuts for kids, and I would bring the service agencies into the barbershops, and I'd have barbers come from all over the city, right? And I would move it around to different barbershops so that all the barbers, the owners, could get that love. And I bring the media. I had different service agency, job readiness training, the Department of Social Services, health organization, Jordan Health, for people to get clinical health and stuff. Different organizations would come, and any kids ages 10 to 17 had to, and I still do this to this day, had to come accompanied with a parent or a guardian. So they couldn't just come by themselves and drop their kid off and leave. You got to come with a parent or a guardian. You got to stay. And the Pirate Toy Foundation would give us free toys, and so it was totally free to come and get this information. So I started that program almost 20 years ago, right? And it just swole it spread of different, and I even see to this day people doing it in other. I'm not taking credit for it in other cities, but it was all about talking to these young kids, giving them alternatives. The barbershops becoming safe spaces for kids, and they know that they're safe spaces, and showing them some love, and also connecting them to services, as well as giving them a nice free haircut. Because I was seeing all these kids walking around looking kind of, like they needed a haircut, and so let's just start giving out. I've given out hundreds of thousands of dollars in free haircuts in over 20 years at these types of events. So that made a huge difference. I think it was really one of the catapults that really got me a lot of respect from the community, because it's one thing when people talk about helping people, but when you get, and the program was never funded. I never had no money from nobody to this day. Never had no money from nobody. Never made no money from it. It was all love, free time and effort from these participating barbershops. The second one I would say that has made a huge difference and that has grown and is going national is the Rock Against Gun Violence Coalition. When I came into city council in 2018, we touted that we were having some of the murder rate in Rochester was at one of its lowest. We were averaging 20 to 30 homicides a year, which was really trending us down. And even with it going down, I saw a need that we were still having. 20 is too many. I figure one life taken was too much. I went to the mayor at that time, good friend of mine, first female mayor here, Mayor Lovely Warren, and she supported me in creating the Rock Against Gun Violence Coalition. What I noticed in our city, I could talk about these silos and how we got all these programming, but the results are poor. We had a lot of people working in these spaces of violent prevention, but they didn't talk to each other. They didn't communicate. And when somebody got murdered or when somebody got harmed in our city, there was no comprehensive, consistent response to those families, to that community that now have been traumatized. And it's trauma of violence and gun violence specifically in America and in every inner city, in every place in the country, because it's rural now. We're seeing it happen everywhere. It creates a lot of trauma in these communities. And so I created a coalition, started within government, and brought everybody at the table, anybody who was open to advocating, eradicating against gun violence in their community, were able to come to this table, and still we have monthly meetings out of that. And at the time in 2017, we were at some of our lowest numbers of homicides, and we had an 89.9% arrest rate in homicides. Now that's huge for almost a 90% arrest rate. Now, but our shooting rate was poor. It was like 30% or something around there. And so through the coalition, we began to create action plans to say, how can we better our shooting arrest rate like we do our homicide arrest rate? Not knowing the pandemic was going to happen. This 2018. And people was looking at me like I was crazy. We had the lowest rate. We got the great. Why would we need something like? We don't need a homicide response team. We don't need a mobile trauma unit. We don't need all the things that came out of this coalition. We don't need that now. Things are well. The pandemic hit. We went from 20 homicides to 80 something homicides in the year 2000. Now, but we had all of these things in place. Who would have known that, these things, we would have needed these things as much as we have them now? And so, and because of that, so many other programs, because county government, when I was in county government, deals with human services. City government didn't do human services. So now, since I've been in government, it's not because of me, but I was a part of it. We've shifted our focus to more human service type programming. And this coalition was a part of advocating for a lot of those things to happen, and has made a huge difference. We can always quantify and quantify how many deaths and murders we've had, but we can never tell how many lives we've saved.
What's strange about that is I don't really think that they're trying to find out how many lives are being saved, because it's all about the negative image that they have to project within that mainstream media that people have gotten away from now. Mm-hmm. Because there's nothing right about that. So I'm just gonna leave that at that point, because I've got so much to say about that.
Okay.
So can you tell us, how do you build coalitions across different sectors and beliefs?
Well, trust is everything. You know what I mean? So I really believe that you have to you have to build bridges and break down walls. So people got to believe in you. They got to first trust you. If they can, it's like in the pastoral role, they have to be able to trust you first. So when you're able to under promise and over deliver, and when you're able to show that you're really, everyone has a voice and everyone's voice is respected, and you treat everyone fairly, and you work on what the collective goal is, and they don't see your own individual agenda popping out and pride and ego popping all over the place. The mission has to be, and I think the military and the fire department and all of that kind of gave me that, right? Because that's how they train. The mission is always bigger than the individual, right? The team, the group. And so I lead that way. I show up like that. I show up like, how is the team we going to win together? What's our mission? And then let's stay focused on the mission, and everybody playing their role, and everyone has a role to play. And I think when that's clear and when that's understood, and when people feel respected and cared for, that's how you build those coalitions.
So let's transition over to your podcast, the Love and Light podcast. Mm-hmm. So tell us, what inspired you to start the Love and Light podcast?
Well, the Love and Light podcast, big up to my friend again, former mayor, Lovely Warren, who's my co-partner on the Love and Light show. Big up to Andre Langston from WDKX. WDKX is the #1 radio station in upstate New York, one of the few Black-owned and operated radio stations in the country. And the WDKX literally stands for Dr. King, Malcolm X, are the letters and what they stand for. So it has a lot of and Frederick Douglass. So it has a lot of historical meaning and content behind it. And so having a relationship with the owner there, myself and my co-partner, we had always been kind of discussing maybe doing something on the show. So we were approached by the owner of the show to consider, because at the time he was developing a podcast kind of network that he wanted to do, because everything up until that point was just all audio. And so we were approached about doing the show, and we kind of brainstormed, and we said we both have a very interesting history in this town, in this community, and we both come from the people that mentored us, like my father that mentored me. And for her, she came from a very well-respected assemblyman, late David F. Gant, who was the dean of assembly here. So we and in us being the next generation, we had a lot of history for Rochester politically and community. And so that's, I think, was the premise of him considering us. And then we just already had a relationship there with the owner, and it just made sense. And so we did a spinoff of our names, Lightfoot for me, and her name's Lovely. So Love and Light, we put that together. And the whole premise of the show is to talk about the things that we love, and to shed light on the things that people don't talk about or don't talk about nearly enough. And so that is how we come together. We do the show a couple times a month. And now it's streaming on YouTube. It was just audio at one point on the WDKX audio podcast platform and Spotify and all those other things. I don't know all the names of them, but and it's been doing pretty well. And I enjoy the opportunity to talk about a lot of topics and things. And it's very short. It's only like a 20-minute show.
So what messages are you hoping to spread through the show?
So we've talked about anything about relationships. Our last show, we just got done talking about where are our girls. We have a lot of missing children, over 8 missing children here locally. We talked about, and you look across the country, there are a lot of missing young girls across the country, and boys for that matter, but young girls across the country, but not too many people talking about that. Like, where are these kids? What's going on here? What's happening in these neighborhoods and these communities, and with sex trafficking and all these other things that we're hearing about? We hear it on the national stage with some of these big entertainers and things of that nature that are getting caught up in this type of stuff, but we're not hearing it on the local level. And a lot of people, it's a big issue. And so we talk about stuff like that. We talk about politics. We talk about how politics affects us, how local politics really matter in your local municipalities, and how to get civically engaged. And then we talk about spiritual content as well. And how faith it meets our communities, and the importance of having faith in your life. So we're all over, various topics, on our shows, and we talk about it, and we also take ideas from the listening viewers and audience as to things that they may want to hear and talk about as well.
So what's been the most memorable episode so far?
Wow. For me, I would say, she would probably say something different, but for me, I would say when we at one point, Rochester was considering a casino in our town.
Oh Lord. Look, they want to make y'all even poorer.
Brother King, we shot the show. We had to shoot it 3 times. That's how heated the show was. She was pro, I was against it. And man, when I tell you, one of them, we shot it 3 times because they couldn't air the other ones. It was that bad, right? I would say I won all of the arguments, but anyway, I think to me that was the most memorable show, because the impact that would have had on our community the difference of opinion we were on the issue, and I would think we would have been more together on that issue. But man, that was one that, and they end up not doing it. They end up not doing it. But that was a pretty heated show.
But just in general, as you just mentioned that, I think what a lot of people are not understanding about these casinos, and especially where they're placing them, that is city, state, wherever they're putting them at. And if you look geographically, they are very well essentially located to urban areas. Very well essentially located. They're located there for the reason of giving you this hope of going and losing all your money, because you already know that the thing is set up where it's not going to let you win.
It's not going to let you win.
But people are thinking, oh, I'm going to go and hit this big jackpot. So you've been lost all of your money, and now you're homeless. And now you robbing and you stealing because you can't fight Peter to pay Paul because you still ain't got no money.
That's right.
But what it's doing is it's sucking everything out the community.
That's right. That's
sucking
right.
everything out the community.
Everything.
But it's those legislators that's actually sitting there that's saying, okay, we can do this as long as we place it here. If we place it here, we're fine. And sometimes they'll say they'll put it up for initiative where you can go and vote on it. But a lot of times you just know all of a sudden, wow, we got a casino.
Yeah, and the thing that makes it, I agree with everything that you just said. And I will also add that most of these casinos, especially here upstate New York, are owned by the Native Americans, right? So
Yes.
So now if you put that sovereign nation in the middle of your downtown commercial property, you've now given away, in some instances, all of your property that was once owned by the city. That what I'm saying? And so I just think that, but on the moral tip, as far as mental health is already a huge issue. Yes. And I had a friend of mine who's a judge, and he called me when we heard we were having these discussions, and he said, bruh, he told me a story about his mother who almost lost her home, right? Yep. Going to the casino. She got hooked. The seniors are really getting hooked into this stuff, right? Because they don't have nothing else to do. So they're going to and then now you're going to put it on the bus line or where they can walk to it, or these already distressed, that crescent I told you about, these already distressed communities and neighborhoods that aren't getting the resources that they need for decades, historically, systemically, racism and all the other isms you want to put in these particular communities. And now you want to put this big vice right smack dab in the middle of them that they can't resist, and that they're going to end up losing everything they own. And so I, in no good conscience in any way, could ever be in support, especially in the inner city of our community. I think it would be a bad move.
Okay, look, we have a comment here in the chat here from Dr. Willie. I'll place it on the screen. He says this is why he didn't want to vote for a casino in Petersburg, Virginia. And his second comment is, let me take this one down. And his second one here is, I think it will bring more crime and won't employ people who live in Petersburg, but they sold the idea around better jobs and better schools and resources for schools, which that's, you know what? Thank you so much for that, Dr. Willie, because that is the big lie that they sell to a lot of folks. And when they sell that lie, they put that lie with the biggest bow on it that you could ever imagine. It's beautiful with crystals flying off of it. It's got sparkles and stars. And it's like, oh, that's so beautiful. I want that. I want to go see that. Yeah, you want to go see that because it's hook, line, and sinker. Once you get in there one time, you are not going to stop.
Yeah, I agree. And I think that's a great question, Dr. Willie. And I would also add to that, and to dispel the lie. First of all, when you look at schools, and I'll tell you just about Rochester, money is not the issue of our school problem. We keep giving them the school district, more and more money, and they keep having failing school districts. money is it's a broken system. It's not money. Throwing more money at something with a hole, the Bible talks about having a hole in your pocket. If you can just keep stuffing money in there, it's going down the hole. And I said this statement. I said it publicly one time about schools, and people got upset with me when I said, "Would you give a crackhead more money?" Right? And people like, that's not going to help the crackhead more money, right? So giving schools more money and resources is not the problem. So telling a casino is going to help change graduation rates, that's absurd, because it's been proven in most of these inner cities with poor schools, when you look at their budgets, they got some of the biggest budgets than everybody got. It's not money. Money is not the problem, right? So, and then jobs, they don't hire people from those communities. Nope. And if they're not working in the jobs that are really the good paying jobs. So, here we have one in Niagara Falls that's about an hour and a half from Rochester. And I went there. I've been there before to visit, and I went intentionally to go walk around and see. There wasn't many people that looked like me working in that casino. And so, I agree. I think they sell it on that. And I also do believe this too. I believe that a lot of leaders be benefiting from this stuff some kind of way as well too.
Of course they are. They getting the kickback. Which of course we know that's illegal, but they only shine the light when they want to catch the black politician. That's when they shine the light. They don't shine the light on the white ones that's doing that. But there's another comment here in the chat from Candy Campbell, and she just gave us a LOL. Let's transition here over to Black history and your personal influence. When we chatted, and I told you we do Black History 365, and I asked you who were the most influential person or persons in your life and career. Mm-hmm. You told me it was Malcolm X, James Brown, Little Richard, and Russell Simmons, just to name a few, because you had a whole lot more. Mm-hmm. Can you tell us why are Malcolm X's teachings so influential to your worldview?
Yeah, I would add Frederick Douglass to that too. But when you ask the question, I'm thinking about people who had a tremendous impact, not only on me, but on the world, right? And Malcolm X, when I think of Rochester, one of the last places that he spoke publicly was here in Rochester, New York. He spoke at a local church here before he was assassinated a few months before. And also my senior deacon at my church, who has since passed away, the late Joseph E. Hall, was the funeral director for Malcolm X and Betty Shabazz in Harlem. And so, but he lived here in Rochester. He had a funeral home here in Rochester called Hall's Funeral Home. And so I had a connection, I felt like, because I would always hear the stories that Deacon Hall would tell me about Malcolm X and how that whole situation went. And kind of like when you look at the pictures of the funeral of Malcolm X and you see that guy in shade standing next to Betty Shabazz, that's Deacon Hall, Joseph Hall. And he was a deacon he was my senior deacon at my church. And so I just always and one of the local editors here, Black editors here, had a magazine for many years called About Time. And her and her husband gave me, when I was very young, a audio tape of his speech here. And so I've always, and I think of when I listen to that speech, the tone that he had and how the things he said was going to happen in America. Now this is back in the 60s, and I can play that tape today, and some of them same things that he talking about is happening right now today. It's happening right now today. It's incredible. It's incredible.
I got two books of all his speeches, and I can tell you, I can just pull one out the hat. It doesn't matter. Don't even look. Just pull one out. And I can guarantee you everything that Malcolm X said back then is happening right now.
Yes. Yes.
Here in the chat one more time here, there's two more comments. Candy, let me show it to you. She was laughing because of what you said about the crackhead. And Dr. Willie said that exactly, Pastor Lightfoot, people who don't look like us will be brought in to run the casino, and the ones who do look like us will work the low-wage service jobs.
Yes, I agree.
And so what does James Brown represent to you beyond music?
So James Brown, to me, beyond music, I would say just the trends of setting, the way he set trends and broke color barriers. You know, during his time, and how through music he was able to break down a lot of racial color barriers. That's why I put him and Little Richard in that same kind of category. That's why I chose him too, because even with Little Richard, you know, being different as he was, and being able to break down a lot of barriers and stigmas that people had in that time, that had to be very strong and courageous at that time to be able to do some of the things those men were doing during that time, under that racial tension that we still have today, but not as violent and venomous as it was, as it is, you know, different today than it is. You know, we have people hiding behind keyboards and stuff now, but they had, you know, people actually burning people. And not that, you know, we heard just some young men was on the cross in Mississippi just recently. I'm not saying these things don't happen today, but I'm saying it was the norm under their time, and they really stayed steadfast in breaking down those barriers. And I think that helped us to get further along as people of color in this country and world.
So how did Little Richard's legacy shape your understanding of identity and expression?
Yeah, he was unapologetically himself. You weren't going to tell Little Richard nothing. You understand?
Exactly.
You know, he was unapologetically himself. I respect that. And the fact that also when I hear of some of the biographies and things and YouTube videos I've watched of him live giving interviews and stuff, I didn't realize that so many, like James Brown was in his background. Various Mick Jagger. There were so many of the great ones who actually came from under him. You know, that he took on tours, and they were background singers for him and all kind of stuff. And so I don't think he gets enough credit that he deserves for the way he impacted the world in music, and other great musicians who are put at a real high level, and his name is not mentioned in those GOATs, if you will. And they came from underneath his tutelage.
Well, you know, one thing that, you know, I have said to a lot of folks, because a lot of people really didn't listen to the Rolling Stones, but you can hear a lot of soulfulness in their music.
Yes.
You hear a lot of it there. I mean, you know, I'm not taking anything away from them, but I'm just saying, you hear a lot of soulfulness in their music.
Yeah, definitely.
What impact has Russell Simmons had on your approach to entrepreneurship and culture?
Yeah, you know, and I know people probably may see this as different because I'm a pastor, but I have to keep it real. I say I come from an urban community. I'm a 90s baby, and I'm a 70s baby, and I come from the 80s, 90s era. And so that was the hip hop era, the birth of the hip hop era. And I came out of that hip hop era, you know, where, you know, DJing, breakdancing, rapping, graffiti, and all of that. So I embraced as it. That kept me out of the streets. It kept me and my family, friends, and stuff like that from doing negative things in the community and in the streets. And so because of that, the people that were at the forefront, being in New York, I'm from upstate New York, so New York City was, you know, the Mecca. The Bronx was the Mecca of hip hop. And so we were getting a lot of that stuff first here in Rochester. You know, the music that was coming out of New York City, with the places they would tour, because you couldn't tour a lot of places back then because people were afraid, like they were rock and roll. They were afraid of hip hop concerts and stuff like that. And so, but Rochester was a site where they would bring a lot of those type of concerts. And so Russell Simmons, along with his partner, started Profile Records. Rick Rubin started Profile Records, and then Profile Records turned into Def Jam. And some of the biggest artists that we respect to this day, the LL Cool J's and the Slick Ricks and all of the Beastie Boys and all, they all came from out of Def Jam Records. And Cool J is one of the biggest entertainers ever, you know, we see now today. And so I had a chance to meet him here. He came to the University of Rochester and gave a speech. And he was the first millionaire black man that I had ever really kind of like heard of and actually got the chance to talk to, touch him, shake his hand, have a conversation with, that didn't come from business. You know what I'm saying? He wasn't a black, you know, he was in business and had a business, don't get me wrong, but I'm saying he came from the streets. He came from the community. And so that was always, but he was a man of little words. You never really saw him like flashy and you know what I mean? Very humble type of guy. And so that was always encouraging to me. And when I met him, I asked, you know, I had my little piece of paper and I want him to tell me the secrets of being successful. He said hard work, faith, and determination. And then that was it. And he left. I said, that's it. But you know, that's it. Hard work, faith, and determination. And I've always kept that at the forefront of everything I do. And it was good words of advice.
Okay, I just put this across the screen. Dr. Whitty say, don't forget the radio on the shoulder, Pastor. You see it on the screen?
Huh?
You see it on the screen?
Oh, yeah, don't forget the radio. Yeah, okay. right. Yes, I see it now. Yeah, absolutely. I mean, so, you know, that was just an era that was, you know, during those 80s and 90s that when I was growing up, that just was when the community was a community for me, you know, and I just never forgot that time. And I remember people saying, oh, that stuff is not going to last. And you look at what hip hop is today and how it impacts everything that we hear, from ringtones to commercials to even watching the football game and everything, things that you would have never thought in a million years. They're actually now Snoop, you know, and them did the halftime show. I mean, you just look at where it's come. He evolved in 50 years of it now. Like I said, I'm 53. And it's just, to me, it's amazing where now you don't even hear rock and roll. Do you even hear of any rock and roll channels or any, or even country for that matter. The things that were leading during those times, that they said this music would never last, but now it's outlasted those things like that and is at the forefront of everything that we see in our society. I think it's pretty amazing, starting from people that come from the ghetto, if you will.
Right. And got a comment here from Dana King. It's on the screen right there. She says, "Wow, so true."
Yeah, I mean, I remember hearing the stories. Oh, that stuff not going to last. That's just going to be a fad, and you know. And I remember how prevalent rock and roll was, and the bands and all I can't tell you the last time I heard of a rock and roll band touring somewhere or selling out arenas or having some type of awards show. You know what I mean?
Yes. Final question for you.
Yes.
How do these figures reflect different facets of Black excellence?
How do the people that we just got done talking about?
Yes, all of the Black history people that we were just talking about question wise. Okay. How do all of these figures reflect different facets of Black excellence?
Oh, okay. Yeah, because I think they show that we're so multifaceted and diverse. We can fashion articulation, artistry, musically inclined, dancing, we think of acting and various other art forms that we're able to be and transcend all different types of spaces. I think that they all just embody how diverse we are as a people. And when we talk about excellence, I see excellence is when you're able to do multiple different things and do them well. People often want to generalize people when they meet you. What do you do? And you're supposed to be able to do one thing, right? I always blow people's mind when they go, "What do you do?" I try to figure out, well, what do you want me to do? Like, what is it you want to hear from me? Do you want me to be the businessman, the politician, the pastor? Like, what is it? You know, the barber? Like, what do you need? Like, what, you understand what I'm saying? That, like, all that, though. You understand what I'm saying? And you're not gonna put me in no box. Those people embody that you couldn't put them in no box. They
right.
were all that and then some. And that's Black excellence. We are all that and then some.
Mm-hmm. Well, so in closing, Pastor Lightfoot, Would you like to leave some words of wisdom and encouragement for our guests, as well as tell them how to connect with you on social media, tell them about your website, how to get your books, all of those good things?
Yes, sir. First and foremost, I just want to say thank you again for this opportunity. I truly, truly am humbled and appreciate the opportunity. I don't oftentimes, I know most people love to talk about themselves and the things that they do. I don't get those opportunities very often. And so it felt, especially to dive into some of the personal things that some of the conversations that I've had with you, I've never had with anybody about my father, my journey. Some people don't even know, I had to fight in order to get to an elected position, things of this nature. Some people may have never heard before. So I appreciate the opportunity and hope that encourages others out there. And my words of encouragement is the same thing, I guess, that was told in me: faith, hard work, and determination to keep always letting your light shine constantly, and don't let people put you in the box. We have more information than we've ever had before at our fingertips. There's nothing stopping us but ourselves. The greatest thing that we can be delivered from is from ourselves. If we get out of our own way and allow ourselves to be great and let God be great in us and through us and around us, that our light, somebody, I think it was Marianne Williamson in her poem that says, don't diminish yourself to let somebody else feel good, to let your light shine bright, right? And so I want people to know that they're great and that they continue to be great. As far as connecting with me, it's very simple. My church is called Prayer House Church of God by Faith. Our website is prayerhousecogBF.org. We have an app. You can download our app from our website or from Google Apple Store or Google Play, and it's free. It says all of the information about our church. As far as the book, I have the book here. It's called The Intersection Between Pain and Purpose. You can find that on Amazon. You can find it on Barnes and Noble. And it's called The Intersection Between Pain and Purpose, written by myself, Willie J. Lightfoot Sr. And I would just, as far as politically, the city of Rochester.gov website is where you can find information about me and my perspective as a city councilman. I will be in that role until December. And if it's the Lord's will, I'm looking to retire from politics, that is, in December of this year. But I'm very grateful to have the opportunity to serve our community for almost 20 years in an elected position. And I'm looking forward for the best is yet to come. And again, I just really appreciate the space and the time to be able to talk about our communities and to share the similarities that we have across our world and our country when it comes to dealing with the quality of life issues that we deal with. And I just want to encourage people that God loves you, He cares about you, and your best is yet to come.
Well, look, I gotta close out, but I just want to tell you, when you started that music, when you was talking about that music, there's like more comments that just flooded into the chat. And again, this one, I'll put it on the screen for you. This from Dr. Whitty says, that's because everybody is trying to be like us and appeal to us. And yeah. And then he says also they want to sound like us. And this one is from Dana King. Dana says, in other words, they're trying to figure out your expectations without asking. And she also says, my friend on, and I really... Thank you very much, Dana, for joining us, and I hope that you continue to join us because there's always a great conversation and things for people to learn. For everybody that has watched us on all 8 channels in which we stream, I appreciate, everybody for taking the time to listen to the show, but also the participation, because the participation really, really means a whole lot, because when the conversation is good and we can involve the audience like particularly tonight. That is exactly what our purpose is, and I want to thank you all for that. For those of you that are watching on those YouTube channels, if you have not yet subscribed, please support us by subscribing to the channels as well as getting all of the notifications, because besides the show that you'll get a chance to see live, you can go back and watch all of the previous recorded shows. There's also posts that go up on the various channels as well, which are also some things that are fruitful knowledge for each and every individual, as well as we definitely talk about the times and how things are and what we can always do to better our communities. For those of you that are listening tonight, Pastor Lightfoot just gave us an enormous amount of knowledge, as well as taught a master class on community. I want you to think about the one thing that he said. This is in the beginning, that his business and his church are in two of the lowest and poorest districts in the state of New York. They're upstate New York. And for those of you that want to get some value and some understanding to that, think about economics, think about the state of New York, and think about the difference between upstate New York as well as the city. And then you'll understand just how valuable that is, which means that there's a lot that has to go into that. But remember, community is where it is. Because if we're not building our communities, then what are we going to do? Remember, nobody's coming to save us, because I want you to think about this. If you're in an urban community, the thing is the hope is that you'll kill each other off and die, and people will just be able to take that land wherever you live, those areas, and just do fruitful things with them. So if that's the case, why not be fruitful and think about the large scale goal of what they did for the original Black Wall Street? That was a community in which we should all look at that model and set an example for what we want our communities to be. Because as we support our communities, we build our communities, which means we can be our own resource and not have to worry about somebody else coming in and say, hey, well, we need this or we need that. You can do it yourself. And each and every individual that's out here that's not just listening to this, but those that will listen to this, to know one thing. If it's up to us, then that means that we must act. And if we're going to act, we need to act more than just responsibly, but we also need to make sure that we are in a structured, disciplined way of ensuring that we have a safe fail, which we never plan to fail, but you always want to have a safe fail, because if something happens, you want to be ready for that. I want to thank you, Pastor Lightfoot, because you really did a wonderful job here, and I appreciate you. And I still had so many questions that I was not able to get them all out, but I've got to ask you to come back.
Amen. Anytime, brother.
And you know, this was really wonderful, and I just thank you again, because again, you know, everything is being so fruitful right about now, and I can only say that that's just a blessing, and I have to appreciate you.
Thank you.
So for all of you that have been watching tonight, I thank you. Please come back and watch us tomorrow night, as we have a Friday special. We will have Dr. V tomorrow night, and Dr. V has got a lot of things to tell us, because she's unapologetically in the same version and form of telling the truth as Pastor Lightfoot said about Little Richard. She's unapologetic. It's going to be a show that you guys need to watch. Thank you all. Y'all have a great evening, and see us again tomorrow night, America in Black and White, where we will continue to color conversations on the canvas of America.